Hello again, this is TVP World, I'm Rafał Tomański, and we still try to understand the whole repercussions of today's anniversary. So 83rd anniversary commemoration day of the outbreak of Second World War, a very important historically day not only for Poland. We'll be joined remotely currently by Professor Stephan Lehnstaedt of College in Berlin. Good evening to you, sir. Good afternoon.
Hello.
This is a very important day for Poland as well, and for history of whole Europe and the world, I guess, as well. We've been trying to understand the historical repercussions of this 83rd anniversary, and you recently had an interview, very important as well for understanding the whole picture, the bigger picture, with reparations, with historical responsibility. You used this phrase exactly to describe that the German government should be responsible historically for repaying to Poland the desired amount of money. It depends on of course, of the numbers, on the data, for the atrocities, for the crimes committed, for the occupation. Can you tell us more about your stance on this issue, please?
Yeah, I think that these reparations, they are an issue that stand between Germany and Poland. And I mean, we are neighbors for centuries now, and we're joined together in the European Union. And I think a good neighborhood means that you can talk about everything, and that if there is an issue that's important to one partner, it should be important to the other partner as well. That's for once. And then, of course, there is a historical obligation for Germany and a moral obligation as well to stand to the crimes that Germans committed during World War II. And Germany always claims that it stands to this responsibility, and often it does. But that, in my understanding, would also mean to talk with Poland about reparations.
It is very well said about the good neighborhood relations. How would you assess the level of education of German society of the things that happened during the Second World War in Poland?
Well, I mean, the thing is that in the Second World War, so masses of German crimes. And the thing is that obviously Poland is not the only country, and Poles were not the only nation that suffered from Germany. So what we have here in Germany is an education that tries to address crimes during German crimes during the Second World War. And in this education, there is a small part that is also dedicated to Poland. This part is small, unfortunately, and I'm not sure, I actually would doubt that it's proportionate. And we have to say that clearly our education in Germany is focused on the Holocaust as the probably most terrible crime, the Holocaust also as a crime that cost 3 million Polish Jewish citizens its lives, but that's the focus. Apart from that, yeah, everyone in Germany knows that Germany started the war against Poland. Everyone knows that there were crimes committed in Poland. But beyond that, it is not very concrete, the German knowledge.
So it's not a detailed knowledge, right?
No, it's certainly not. And this is, again, it's due to the many crimes committed in Germany, and it's due to historical education, history classes in school being, of course, not dedicated only to the Second World War, but as in Poland, we cover the whole history. And of course, we dedicate some hours to the Second World War. But it's certainly not enough. And speaking as a historian, I would always argue that it's very important to have history lessons at school. But yeah, my colleagues from the math departments would probably argue that math is also important. So, well, yeah, in a way,
I guess
history comes too short, but other subjects are also important.
I guess every part of knowledge is very important to create a better human, to understand the world around around each of us. Sir, how about this report that has been published today by the Polish government? It tries to assessment. It's a some may say that it can be only a rough estimate because it's very difficult to assess the losses after more than 8 decades, and of course many circumstances during that time have passed. However, that's a concrete assessment and a concrete appeal to German government, and I guess more legal issues will follow. Do you think that such news, such data presented in the report might be shocking to German public opinion?
I think it's certainly shocking to German public opinion, but it's probably shocking because of lacking knowledge. I think in Poland, the book by Karl-Heinz Roth, it's a German colleague of mine, originally published in German. It was also published in Polish by the Institute Zachodni in Poznan. And he, I think 5 years ago, he already had a figure that said, well, it's 1.2, and now we have 1.3. So, I mean, it's a difference, but the difference is not gigantic.
Slight
so,
difference.
in general, I would say that we should have known in Germany, we could have known, and it's also quite clear that this data presented today, the figure in the end was already on the table for some years. Now we have a detailed report. Obviously, I have not yet checked these 500 pages. It's a lot to read, and I'm very curious to read it entirely. But it sounds very realistic to me. We have to say then what we can do with it, what Germany wants to do. Our foreign ministry already said that no, for us the case is closed. But on the other hand, we have to see that reparations paid by Germany to the Allies also only covered minor parts of the actually inflicted damage. And we can say that the reparations paid to other allies amounted to about 13–14% of the actually inflicted damage. In Poland, the figure is more like 10 or 11%. The difference actually not being that huge, but it shows that reparations have in no way been paid according to the inflicted damage and losses. And what I think is particularly striking, and where we really have a difference, that is the individual compensation. So that's not national reparations paid to a country, but to individuals who were persecuted, who were deported to forced labor, who were incarcerated in concentration camps, and so on. Here we can see a huge difference because Polish civilians, they were virtually excluded from all the payments because payments were only made to those survivors, victims living in Western Europe. Mm-hmm. And here we really have to do something. I mean, they are getting fewer and fewer every day.
Of course, very well said. We remember when Chancellor Kohl, so many years ago, said that the Kasse ist zu, so the bank is closed already for any reparations to be paid. And after him, the Chancellor Schroeder agreed to pay some, I guess we may use the word pathetic, low amount of money of such reparations to these slave workers and some of the people sent to concentration camps, but only being pressed by the Americans. So in this case, do you think that the Polish government will find a legal procedure to follow with all this reparation thing?
I think it's a difficult question, and I'm a historian, I'm not a lawyer, and we have many lawyers who say, well, the case is closed. We have other lawyers, these are mostly German lawyers. We have obviously many Polish lawyers who say, well, no, the case is not closed, so probably we need an international court to settle the case. But in my opinion, these reparations, I mean, of course, they are a legal issue, but I think to a much more, they are in many ways, they are a moral question, and they are a moral obligation for the Germans and the German people and the German government. And I think it's really problematic if the German government says, well, we are committed to our responsibility and to our history and so on, but then reject moral responsibility that costs money. And that's a big problem. Historical responsibility, if it's only acceptable if it's for free, then probably it's just pathetic.
And do you see any actors, any politicians on German political scene that may be willing to agree on this moral obligation in this case?
Well, yes, of course, we have politicians more on the left wing spectrum of the German parties that are generally open. But again, we have to wait for the official claim coming from Warsaw. The Polish government has now presented figures for the actual losses, but they have not said how much money they want. So the question is, do they want the entire $1.3 trillion? Then, of course, we have to say that some money was already paid. As I said, some 12-13% of this has already paid in one form or another. Obviously, for us in Germany, and from a legal perspective, the German Eastern territories, so what's now Zachodnie Pomorskie, Lubuskie, and so on, were part of this reparation. That's what the Allies said. The Allies said, well, this is part of the reparation that is due to be paid to Poland. So this has to be taken into consideration. So in the end, what are we talking about? We don't know this yet. So we really have to wait for the official request. And I think it would be good if the German politicians would be open to, well, start at least talks. They are not required to start these talks by signing a check about $1.3 trillion. That's not the idea of talks. But the idea of talks is to get an understanding what's the issue here and why it's important, and then to pay a check. And I think in the end, that would be a good idea.
And of course, we'll be closely following all those developments. Thank you very much for your time and insight for us. Our guest was Professor Stephan Lehnstaedt from College, Berlin. Thank you again, sir.
Thank you.
And of course, much more still to come on TVP World. Stay with us. Eastern Express is next.
Dziękuję również.